Wicked Mini Paintings. Yeah. Hello everyone, my name is Brent Lee and welcome to Wicked Mini Painting How-To Tutorials. I'm a content creator over on Twitch with twitch.com/Wicked Mini Paintings. If you want to see live content, I stream on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays 5 to 9 Pacific Standard Time. So if you guys want to see some online content, head over onto Twitch and check it out. Till then, I'm going to be making some tutorial videos here on YouTube with how to do non-metallic metal gold for this tutorial. And non-metallic gold is just using non-metallic paints to acquire a metallic look. There's many recipes out there, so I'm going to be showing you guys what the product I'm going to be using will be Pro Acryl from Monument Hobbies. And I'll make sure that all the link is down there in the description below. So before we get started on this, if you do like this video, please like it, subscribe to it, and hit that little notification button for new content. And so without further ado, let's get our wicked on. So now we're going to be getting into actually doing non-metallic metal gold. We're going to be working on this backpack here. We're going to actually be working on all these trim pieces that you see that are all coated in that black trim, and that is where I like to start with. There are opportunities of actually doing coverage over top of your base color that you have, but I like just keeping it at just a solid black. So let's get into like the paints that we're going to be using. Okay, so I already told you guys we're going to be working with Pro Acryl. And so with Pro Acryl, we're going to be doing my recipe. My recipe is that we're going to start with a dark golden brown, as you can tell right there. Okay, give it a good little shake stir there, and then let's go ahead and give a little palette squeeze here. You don't need a whole lot because I'm just going to be doing this little part on the backpack, so we just need a little bit there. Okay, and then the next one is yellow ochre. Okay, and it's a beautiful color. This gets you a start on what the gold is going to start highlighting over top of that golden, dark golden brown. So we're going to give a little bit of a squeeze there. Okay, and then the next one is pale yellow. Pale yellow, we're going to start getting the contrast to go to the brightest points, because with non-metallic metal you have control of where your reflections are gonna be. So we're gonna put a little bit right there, and then to top it all off, you're gonna have to get to your brightest point, and the brightest point is bold titanium white or whatever white that you have. So let's go ahead and pop the top here and give a little bit of a squeeze. Okay, now we got our 4 colors, and that'll get you a normal gold. Okay, but there's another color I like to apply after everything is getting close to being finishing, and then it actually kind of takes place of this dark golden brown. But burnt sienna, and burnt sienna has a beautiful orange, a little bit of brown, and it gives a nice good coloration on the gold. Okay, so we're gonna put a little drop right there. Okay, now with all of that, we're going to take a little bit of water. So we're going to get in a technique called glazing. Okay, and glazing is pretty much just a very watered down, very beyond semi-opaque, and what we're trying to do is we're going to be kind of separating the pigmentation from the paint. And so all you're going to be gathering is a little bit of the pigment, and the pigment comes with a little bit of the medium that the paint is actually mixed with. So you can tell that this thing is super thin. Okay, we're talking about super thin, and we're gonna kind of mix these up. Now, how I'm going to be doing this gold is that we're just going to be going solid straight with one color to the next color to the next color, and this takes a little bit of time. It's patience in this game, okay? So to do this patiently, you have to just get this thing kind of all mixed up, ready to kind of roll, okay? All right, and then like the brush I'm using, just like I said, I was going to be using Monument Hobbies. So this is all Pro Acryl paints, and then of course I use the Monument brushes, but you can use whatever brush you like. I'm going to be doing a number 1. All right, and so now let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit onto this, and then now let's start applying our colors. So I'm going to start dipping into that dark golden brown, okay? So it looks like I have it on here. Then I'm going to take my paper towel, and then I'm going to actually just kind of lightly pull it across. You see how all that moisture just came straight off of that brush? Now it looks like there's nothing on this thing, okay? The coat that you really want is you barely can see it, even onto my finger. Here, let's try it again. See that? That's like the consistency. It's like we're taking colored glass and layering it over top of each other, okay? The reason why I'm doing this technique, and this technique is called glazing, so anytime that someone says, oh, you just glaze over top of this with this color, that's what they're referring to. So with this, I'm going to actually start applying it in these really thin coats, okay? And I'm going to apply all of it on the whole entire part that I'm going to be making gold with, okay? And they're so thin that it doesn't look like you're making any kind of form of progress, okay? Because you're doing it in such thin layers that it's going to take a few layers to actually make this work properly. So I always say, like, the rule of thumb, 7 glaze layers, you got a good solid batch here, okay? And also when you get into glazing, just remember it does dry quick, okay? It's a lot faster, all right? It's just a few seconds, kind of depending on where you live, okay? If you got high humidity, it might take a little bit longer. If it's dry, it's a little faster. So we're gonna sit here and kind of work this area, okay? So we got 1 layer on there already. So now I already know it's going to be completely dry, so we're going to start applying our second layer, okay? And they're super thin, okay? Just kind of going through this process here. And then let's just keep continuing it. I don't think I got this area over here. It's really hard to kind of tell sometimes because you're just starting out. You're covering over top of that black and you're using this right here, okay? So let's just keep on reloading up the brush, pull off some moisture. And then let's go into our third coat. And now you're going to start seeing that it's starting to formulate a little bit more. Okay. And I'm doing trim because if you're doing chaos, there's just a lot of trim on the figure, okay? So with that, and most of the tutorials that I see show like, hey, we're gonna do this leg, and you can kind of see the forms and the shape of an actual figure, and you can kind of see like where light's gonna be reflecting and where your shadows are gonna be. But how about on trim? You know, because you're on trim, they're smaller, they're a little harder to see. Okay, so you got to try to figure out where light's going to be reflecting off of this piece. Alright, so now we're almost about 5 layers in right now. And you can really starting to see this coat coming through. Okay, you can really start seeing that this is actually turning into a brown, right? It's kind of hard with my little pink fleshy skin of my hands, and I apologize for that. So here we go, we're going into layer 6. You can start seeing that it's actually starting to define way more. Okay, really putting on the layers. The reason why I'm doing these glazes is because it's gonna cut out an extra process that you'll probably see in other tutorials, and you'll see them use like a medium. Okay, and there's nothing wrong with it. That's an absolute great way of helping the transitions and to get rid of that kind of chalky look that you'll start seeing on the figure when you start painting. You'll be like, man, it kind of looks chalky, kind of grainy, looks like wood instead of looking like non-metallic metal. And the reason for that is that the paint actually has all the formula that's inside there to give you an actual paint that is meant to be what's the word for it, meant to get the good coverage on there and actually making it look like what it's supposed to be. Okay, so we're taking something that is supposed to be this dark golden brown, right, as a regular paint, but then we're actually glazing it down so we have these great smooth transitions, and all you're doing is taking pigmentation, right, and making it a little bit with just the pigmentation in the medium. Okay, so with the pigmentation in the medium, you get more of a sheen, okay, of a color. And then this should be layer 7 right now. Okay, so we're going on 7. This is pretty much our solid layer for the gold. And now you can really start seeing the difference between that black and that brown, that dark golden brown. Okay, it's a beautiful color. And like I said, all the product I'll be using will be on the description below. So let's just kind of get this nice good coloration. Now when you're actually glaze coating, another thing that you need to keep in mind is not to keep pushing it so hard, okay, because even though that it looks dry, you can still react, it's activating the color below, okay, that layer that you just put down. And sometimes you can actually peel it, almost kind of like a peel skin kind of scenario, and then you got kind of a hole where the color should be, but it actually got separated. Okay, and that's just because of this. You're like putting painted glass, okay, transparent glass, stacking it on top of each other, layer after layer. So you can kind of see right there. See that nice good start base for gold. Okay, now let's go ahead and step it up. Okay, so now we're gonna go over to yellow ochre. Okay, now there's other ways you can do this. You can actually mix yellow ochre with golden, a dark golden brown to get like an in-between color, but the form that I'm doing, because of how this base color of this jade that I was using and the turquoise to get this Thousand Suns, I wanted a nice bright gold. Okay, so we're gonna sit here and we're gonna take this yellow ochre, see how it goes, very translucent, very transparent. Okay, and then now, because it's gonna be on its back and my reflection light is actually gonna be coming off to the left a little bit, so I'm gonna know for sure that the inside of this layer is going to be kind of bright right over here. Okay, And then if you do make any kind of like mess ups, it's not the end of the world. You can always go back to the previous color and glaze it in there. But now you can already tell the difference right there. Add a little bit more water because I want more transparency. I want even more. Okay? Because if it gets on a little too thick, it starts drying as a chalkier form of what you're trying to achieve. So then it'll have that graininess in there. So now I'm just kind of going in even thinner because the pigmentation is so strong right now. Okay, then we're gonna hit right up here. And a lot of people, you know, you don't have to study metallurgy to understand reflections of metals. It works okay if it's a stationary model, if you're taking pictures of it, and then you can actually just kind of get it done and just have the one direction of light form. Okay, so when you're getting into a 3D model, a lot of times realism isn't really a key factor here. Okay, because you'll see a lot of people turning the model, and the reason why they're turning the model is so they can kind of catch a glimpse of the lighting to see if actual reflections are coming off of certain parts, because you're actually going to be turning this model completely around. You know, if somebody's going to be looking it up like up close and personal, right? So we're going to have to control these reflections. So one of the ones that we're going to do here is right on the inside of this, in this depth part. Wouldn't think that it would be that, but that is the way right there. Making that a little bit more solid. Let's get a little bit more gold right here. Okay. Right up here. Gonna have it right in the center. Going closer to this light reflection right here. Let me see here, maybe I can expose the light just a little bit more so you guys can see exactly what I'm going through. I'm sorry, I don't think I had the lighting up to par. So now you can really see. I'm sorry, it was probably a little too dark. Okay, we made that correction. Let's go back into this again. So I'm going to go right back over this again. But when you're doing trim pieces, they're much smaller areas of dark to your light, right? It's a little different than working on just a leg or an arm that has kind of like, you know, where the coloring and the lighting is going to be. Hit this top part here. And then you're gonna, when you're getting through this process, you're gonna have a little bit more texturing, which is fine. Okay, you're not gonna be getting this thing completely smooth, but let's sit here and try to get this these reflections in properly here. right here, you can kind of see like the opposite effect of what we have on this side. And like I said, you're going in very thin coats. You want this to go on smooth as butter. Okay, let's keep going up. Like I said, you're gonna need those layers. Really start pushing those layers. You're gonna start seeing how they start coming out being a little bit more aggressive in the color, a little bit brighter. Just keep pushing those layers. You want to go at least 5, if not 7 layers. I think I'm up to about 4. What we're doing is just kind of tracing in how it's coming along. So now you can kind of see that we're getting kind of that gold. It's starting to look more and more like gold. And it's just time and patience here. Sometimes it'll take you just a few minutes. Sometimes it'll take you a little longer than that. Okay. Now we want to go up into a higher contrast, so we're going to take some of that pale yellow that I was showing you guys. Okay. Well, with it, when you start going up into the brighter colors, the more glaze coats you really want to kind of push on this. And then so now we're going to try to push a higher contrast. It's going to be smaller. Okay. Kind of giving it a bling effect. Okay, so now you can kind of start seeing it. I'm doing like little stipulating, kind of just tapping the brush right onto the edge there, getting it up to these high contrast points. Okay, take some extra layers, but the achievement will be great. So just kind of stick with it. Okay, now let's go in another coat. Like I said, takes layers. Now you can see that you're starting to push those high contrast points there. Another layer. So now when you're spinning it around, you're controlling the reflections, right? Okay. So now you got to give us a little bit of time to dry, and then when the time is drying, you're going to go back into yellow ochre. The reason why is that you're going to be going over these high contrasted points to get more of a gold look to it. So let's just start going and hitting back over with the yellow ochre. And it's going to give you a brighter yellow ochre, of course. And when you're going back over this, you don't need as many layers. It's only up until the point where you're trying to trick your eyeballs and believing that this is actually gold. See how much brighter it just turned? And that's just off of one layer there. Now the more layers you put over to it, you're gonna saturate that pale yellow. Okay, now we're gonna go back into pale yellow again. All right, like I said, this is a back and forth process, very, very super thin. Now we're gonna be a little bit more specific on where we're gonna put our blings. The control reflections. See how it has that bling look on there? Catch the top here. Catch the bottom over here. Catch the edge over here. Inside edge over here. The outside edge on this one. Okay. Now we're gonna bling it down right over here, because this is where your mind and your eye is gonna be catching this, and you have 100% control over your reflections. Okay. We're gonna go inside here. This top part. This outside part. This inside part. I'm gonna go on the top here. Have reflections on the bottom. This one here catching the top. Okay. Refill back up again, pull some moisture off. Let's make that a little brighter. A little under bright, right under here. pushing, you're pushing those contrasts all the way up. Now we're gonna go back into the pale yellow. All right, because there is a hue of yellow, even though that it is pretty white, there's a hue of yellow that's right there. So what we're gonna do now is kind of go right over top of that white, just to give it that little bit of a hue of yellow, just to show that it's still gold. Now you can go right back and just hit those touch moments of white just to give kind of a bling effect, but I don't think you really need to push it any harder than that. Sometimes you can push it too hard and then the realism goes away. So I always kind of keep it where it's still kind of, I mean, to your eye, it's still gonna look white, right? Okay, now it might look a little too saturated with too much brightness. Let's go back into, all you're doing is bouncing between these colors here, okay? So we're gonna go back to yellow ochre. What we're gonna do with yellow ochre is that we're gonna actually shorten up those bling marks. Give it that smooth transition between the two. Like I said, that's why I'm using this #1 brush, because I'm barely just touching it with the tip of the brush. So now you can see where the actual bling marks are. Let's load up some more yellow ochre. Go in some areas that you want more gold in. Make sure you kind of cover up a little bit of that bling, and then you can kind of force that contrast even more by applying darker colors. We're almost there. Like, you can, very simple, very easy. The only thing that comes with it is time and patience. We covered quite a bit on this figure. It'll take a little bit more to kind of finish up like these little edge pieces here, but the main goal was to get this whole front facing part here. Okay, and showing you step-by-step process here. Going still with the yellow ochre. Trying to get that blend, that glaze in between the brights and the darks. You can see how I rotate it. I just want to make sure that it looks good. Make sure that it looks proper when you spin it around. So now you can see that's where our blings are. Okay, now one more final touch. The final touch to make the gold look like you want it to look is going into that burnt sienna. Burnt sienna has a beautiful orange, a little bit of brown, but that beautiful orange and that brown that mix really well with that golden, dark golden brown that we're using. So we're gonna take some of this orange. Okay, that burnt sienna gives you that little bit of an orange hue to it. And we're gonna go and apply it right over top of those dark areas that you had the golden, dark golden brown. The reason why I'm applying it on here is that this orange really accents that jade and that turquoise color that we're using. And really kind of push it into that yellow ochre. See what we got going on there? Has a nice beautiful form of coloring. You see how I'm pushing it right up on top of that yellow ochre? Okay. This is a nice accent to the shaded colors without it almost looking like it's like too dark. And maybe it's looking a little bit too dark because you can go with the recipe of mixing in between colors like that golden brown with the yellow ochre and kind of push it a little bit more. But now that we push the orange into it, you can really start seeing that change in the colors, that formity, that uniform, that tricking your eyeballs, making you believe that that's gold. Okay, now we'll go back to yellow ochre again. Yellow ochre is always the key here is that we're trying to shrink up a little bit more of that dark orange in there to kind of formulate that trickery to your eyes. And then a nice soft blend where you have like a good transition into that gold. But I wanted to do it on these trim pieces because these trim pieces can be a little confusing when you're doing non-metallic gold. So this is like, what do we do? Well, this is what we do. We just take it nice, slow, steady. Make sure that you have your golds where you want them. Shrinking down the darker color and kind of pushing it off just like that. And that is it. That is the recipe right there. Let's take a little bit more of this yellow ochre just because there's a little something that's kind of throwing us off. And that's this piece right here. And then just kind of just add the colors that you need to make your eyes believe that it looks like a metallic piece. Okay? And then now I'm going to go into bold titanium white. The only reason why, we're going to really push that contrast just a little bit more. Bring out that bling. Control those reflections. That's what the whole point of non-metallic metal is to control those reflections. There's these little rivets. See how we just push those bright colors right into it? We forced it to do so. There we go. Now we got that beautiful form of gold. And that is it, everybody. That is my recipe with using Pro Acryl, and then it also will be in the link in the description below. But if you want to see more content, if you have more questions, want me to do different kinds of golds, because there is different recipes with different paints. You can use the same paints and get different kind of output, but this one here, I wanted this gold to come out this way because of that jade color that I have. So in totality, that's where it comes out to be, that nice beautiful gold controlling reflections on the trim as we spin it around. This is the stuff I'm doing on Twitch, so if you guys want to come over, that'll be on the link description below as well. But this will be a nice beautiful little accent, but that is it right there. So if you guys like the content, make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit notifications, leave comments below on what you would like to see next in the videos, and we can start doing other non-metallic golds with scale 75, army painter, what have you. But yeah, just to let you guys know, we got some great content right there. That was super fast, super quick, and you can kind of tell that we kind of threw it tricking your eyeball, letting you see like every time that you rotate it, you have full control over those reflections. And that's what all non-metallic metal is going up into those high contrasts, get those blends. And because I was using those glazing techniques, that it cuts out the chalkiness, the graininess, and like I said, just time and patience. But other than that, guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Hit your likes, get those subscribes, and leave comments if you guys want to see other kind of content that I do. But other than that, thank you guys so much, and